Good morning and welcome to Flat Earth United Kingdom. Joining me this morning, surprisingly, is Arwijn. How are you doing, Arwijn?
I'm doing great, Nathan. Thank you for having me. It's very early for me.
Yeah, well, not too early for me. I'm a bit of an insomniac, so I tend to be up. And chance had it that you said, "Oh, ever fancy doing a show together?" And I'd got all of this stuff set up from not Zoe, from Carly Sunshine yesterday.
Yes.
So it was like, oh, great. Plus there was a camera issue during the show, so I was intending to just set up and have a little test and check that the camera was all working happily, which I'm going to do now actually, as I've got an opportunity to do so. Yeah, it looks fine. Typical. But yeah, so I thought I'd give it a quick
was
test.
a bit blurry yesterday. It was
Say again?
weird.
It was just all fuzzy, weird. But
Yeah.
there we go. Such is life. So I'll ask you the question straight away, because you got in touch with me saying you'd like to chat. So what was it you were hoping to chat about?
Well, flat Earth, of course. But yeah, I just thought that, I don't know, I've been following you pretty much since I came onto YouTube. Since I got into contact with Patricia, you were there, Antonio was there, and I've been following you. And well, I don't know, maybe something happened. I've been talking about this with my fellow flat earthers. Like, something changed about you, I think. I don't know, but you seem to be very engaging and good. I don't know. I like the way your show is going now. I don't know what it is.
Well, that was an unexpected surprise. I'm all red now. I didn't expect to get a barrage of compliments. I thought I'd get some answer like, I watched this Math Powerland video and found out the Earth was flat or something like that. You know, yeah. I'll start with it being a bit more like an formal interview rather than an informal, impromptu chat.
Well, so sorry for embarrassing.
How did you find out, Arwijn, that the Earth is flat?
How did I? Oh my God. Well, that is a very, very long and complicated story that probably not going to fit in its entirety, but the moment that I pretty much, how do you say, figured out again that the Earth was flat, and then decided to actually stick with it, like I kind of decided, okay, this is now the third or the fourth time that it's come across my path, and this time I'm gonna stick with it, because every time I run into the same obstacles again, like, oh, the world doesn't accept it, it's not good for business, all that kind of stuff. And every time, because of this, I forget about it again. I just forget about it. And well, this time it was like this moment. There was this moment that I've been seeing Math Powerland's videos, some of Eric Dubé's videos, even years earlier. Although there is some confusion about this as which videos actually started when, because of my visions, and I actually got to see stuff that wasn't even out yet. So it's very confusing to me in that sense. But yeah, in 2015, I once again came across the videos, the Flat Earth Clues by Mark Sargent. And yeah, this time I just felt like, yeah, he was so soft about it and inviting and promising that I got this feeling, okay, it's supposed to happen now, where we can finally talk about it without being, well, mentally persecuted, as it were, because yeah, there's still this nagging problem in the world, and that is, in the psychiatric manual, flat Earth, believing in it is still considered a mental illness, and this is still a problem for us. But the world has been catching up, luckily, and there's a lot of doubts about psychiatry in general, so it's a little bit safer for us in that sense. But yeah, I just felt 2015, yeah, now's the time. Now we're gonna dive onto this, everyone, and people are starting to lose their fear of it. And first, of course, all the ridicule, but now even that is kind of dying down from the superficial ridicule, and the real globe heads are pretty much what's left, and they're now just nagging us constantly because they don't want to listen. But all the other people, they know that it exists, and most of them don't really want to engage in it, but they know it exists now. It's a very, very big difference from, say, 5 years ago.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
People still responded to flat Earth back then like they would respond, say, 2001, 2002, when you started to talk about 9/11 being an inside job. You would be violently, verbally abused and even fired, such things, if you would say something like that in 2001, 2002. While now, everybody, it probably is, what are we going to do? That's the attitude right now. And I think that flat Earth is also going to move into this direction. Although I have to say that as time has passed, I'm becoming even more skeptical now that it's actually going to be embraced by a government, because they're not giving us the signs. They're not giving us the signs that they're actually working to really embracing it. It's even 9/11, they're not really embracing it. There may be a chance that like this new government is kind of gonna break it to us, like the previous government did this, they're all to blame, and now we're gonna get over it and get on. But who is gonna do that with flat Earth? Seriously, like who's gonna do that? It's gotta be one crazy president with one hell of a plan. No,
I don't think it will ever happen. I mean, it may collapse in on itself.
That's my point. It has to be one crazy situation to get it done, and I don't see it happening. Not with Trump. Well, maybe in the future. You don't know how it's gonna turn out. I think that if the whole globalization scheme that has been set up for a decade now and is starting to fall apart, once that's really unravels, and the whole peer pressure thing and the forced communist way of thinking that's been infected all throughout the West, once that starts to die down, then we may have a chance to culturally reform ourselves in a sensible way, and maybe then it'll have some purpose. It'll have some purpose to declassify this, to, well, maybe exploit some resources out there, or find some new organisms. Maybe we can find, all these lands out there. If there are some forests out there that have been there for 500 years untouched, who knows what's there? There could be all kinds of life forms that we could use, or So that's what
I don't think it'll ever happen. I mean, I think because the way that's set up is to hide the land. I mean, I was talking about this with my wife yesterday and explaining that when I was in a state agency, you could plot a graph for the rise in house prices, and it was always attributed to the same thing. It's the one thing they're not making more of. So therefore, the price goes up, and the greedy landholders, if you want to look at it in those terms, are the people that are going to dictate the laws and make the control structures that keep them wealthy and keep them in power. However, it's a psychopathic system. So by its very nature, it may very well collapse in on itself as people fight to try and keep it in place, while I know you mentioned earlier that it seems to be getting more acceptable. And it's thanks to the efforts of people like Math Powerland really getting out there and taking abuse, taking lots of trolling and horribleness from globe heads. Whereas a couple of years down the line for myself and for yourself, it's more acceptable to talk about it. I don't have any fear of talking about it in public. 2 years ago, you must be kidding.
Yeah.
From that perspective, that's what I think will cause the psychopathic nature of the heliocentric deception to collapse, rather than it just being disclosed by some president. There's nothing in it for them.
Yeah, you may be right, but there's still this weird thing. Like, how would you transition the whole media system, like all the spinning globes everywhere on the news and the alternative news and the talk shows? How do you turn from globe and space and going out there? How do you turn that over to flat?
I think they've already put it in they've put it in already with predictive programming. So we have things like parallel universes, which have been punted to us for a load of time travel, that's punted to us. It's
Yes.
filtering its way in through things like Mandela effect at the moment in the alternative media. So we have parallel universes where we could still have a lot of the notions of space working within a parallel flat. It's one that you could transition, and I think that's there as I'm really speculating here, but it's all right. As a contingency plan, only because of the predictive programming that we see that's based around that and has been around from probably the late 60s and 70s, right around the time they were telling us that space existed. They've had a contingency plan to sell us a different idea that's based around parallel universes, in my humble opinion.
No, I agree with that. But there's one problem about the conditions for this contingency plan, and that was what I was trying to get to in my previous point, is how would you disclose it from being a globe in the media to a flat Earth? And of course, we need the cultural transition thing. We need the conditioning to get used to it, but that's not the only problem, because the media, the mainstream, and every globe carrier out there, they have the same problem as NASA. It's the same thing why NASA hasn't fixed all their problems, because they can't admit to it. Because when they do, even if it's for the right reason under the right circumstances, they have this eternal finger pointed at them that they can never get away, and that is, we lied to you for a century, and we knew it. And we were too afraid to do anything about it, but it's just there. And once they go over that line, they can't do it. They just can't do it. The only way they can do it is by completely breaking that system down and being replaced. And now it's kind of being attempted on a certain level with politics, but the whole media, like the format, has to be replaced from scratch. So a news program that would start up would have to compete with the old format and then do it in a way that does not involve the globe from the start. It just exclude that entire system from the start, and that would be the only way to get some kind of transition going. But all these companies, these media companies, they would have to compete with the entire world that would be pushing on them, would be calling them Hitler, all that shit. Sorry about that. All that stuff that everybody's now getting, that's trying to compete with the old system. They would get that all over them, and that would be a big problem for media, because media thrives on popularity, and when they're constantly being attacked, it's very hard. It has to be a very critical reason for them to stay up, in a practical sense. Otherwise, they're just going to perish. And with Trump now, he's managed to utilize this hatred and the trolling, as it were. He's utilized this in a way that's functional, that he's actually getting something out of it, and that's why he's still there. Why it's still going, and he hasn't gone down under, because he's managed to use it. And unless you can use the negative backlash in a positive way, it's not going to work. So that's what I foresee in this.
I mean, do you think they're starting to disclose it a little bit? I know Jaron recently speculated that they'll let the last of the Apollo moon landing astronauts just die off, and then they'll start spinning the deception out as though it was always known.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that they are probably. It's the one thing that they will do is they're going to declassify the fake moon landing. There's a literal movie about it now, from scratch. You've seen it, of course. I recently only saw it. Project Avalanche. I thought it was amazing. You haven't seen it?
No. I didn't know anything about it. What is a motion picture?
To see it. It's
movie.
It's a movie. It's almost a documentary. It feels like a documentary. It's about a group of nerds that are being hired by the CIA to get the moon landing done. And then pretty much when they figure out that they can't make it in time, they just decide to fake it. Sorry for spoiling it, But I
No,
guess,
that's brilliant. So they're
but it's
essentially
really,
they're
really well
essentially
done. It's so real. It's so the movie is. I'm really impressed by the movie. I think it's one of the best flat Earth related movies that I've ever seen. And I also, of course, there's the interstellar reference to, hey, yeah, the moon landing was fake for political reasons. That beautiful little gem in there. Uh, yeah, so all these things, I think they will declassify the moon landing, but they will never admit that it isn't a globe. They're just gonna keep twisting it until they admit, yeah, we didn't do it, but we could do it, but we're not gonna do it because it's not worth it, and we have other plans. But yeah, the moon landing, they'll cancel on that, but the rest, no. I don't think they need to, not really. If you see this movie, you'll know what I mean. They keep the image going really, really well. If I was a Glober, I would see this movie, then I would say, yes, it was faked, but it's still a globe. So yeah, they really they pulled one on us.
Yeah, such a massive cock up, really, with the moon landings. I assume at the time they thought it would be a complete and total success, and then
No,
forgotten about.
The movie shows this. It was rushed, but they had to. If the movie is exactly how it went, and I think it's likely that it actually went like that. They just had to. They had to rush it. It was political, and they had limited resources. They pulled a fast one, and it's amazing, pretty much, that it lasted as long as it has. That's what the movie suggests.
I do actually think I may have seen an advert for this now, but they spin out the line that it's because of the Cold War, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
exactly.
Like Interstellar.
I don't buy that at all. I mean,
this.
all these we as flat earthers know that all these people are hands across the water with the Antarctic Treaty. You know, it's all the same mixed bag of people, all doing the same job, working for the same team. So by that standard, to say that it was being faked under pressure, I don't buy that at all. I mean, it's an excuse, yeah. It's a good, maybe.
It's the whole thing about there's this. I think that the whole thing that everyone is in one group, I think that's taking it too far. Like, it's one thing that, for example, Mark Sargent has been bringing forth from the start, and that is, hey, Russia, America, they're all into it. They're all part of this NASA or RASA. They're all Jesuits. I'm not going to go on that bandwagon, and I'm going to say they're not unified. No, they're not unified.
You see them. I've got photos of them all together.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, of course. But all world leaders meet, even if they're enemies. That doesn't matter. That's just business. That's the condition for their guild. But that doesn't mean that they're all working together on every front. They're not a unified team. They're not a unified team. They're a conspiracy. They're scammers.
Can you not see the contradiction in what you're saying? You're saying, of course they all work together, but that doesn't mean they work together. That's what you're saying.
To a certain level. They carry the same foundation. They carry the same scam. But that doesn't mean that they're actually friends. They compete. They will destroy each other if they deem necessary. They're not friends. They're just in the same team, like on a certain level, on a secret level. But in the end, they don't really care about each other. They just want to keep the money rolling. That's what their connection is. But they're not one team. I don't buy that for a second. I think there are maneuvers being done, social-wise, social engineering-wise, but I think that when it comes down to it, they would blow each other up if they needed to, if they thought they needed to. They're not really one team. Not really, just partially.
No, I couldn't disagree with you more. That's the impression they want to give you, that they are constantly in battle. The very structure of voting is designed to make you think that.
Yeah, but as I said, they're pulling it too far. Like, even with the whole terrorist stuff, there may be some things that are actually real, although we don't really want to know, even if it was real. But there are obviously a lot of fakeries in between there. You don't get to see very convincing proof. You just have to go with the feeling and with the suggestion. But that doesn't mean that it's all fake. No, it's always like this. It's always, most of it is fake, but it's not entirely fake. And that's why it persists.
I don't know. I knew this would be that kind of conversation,
Yeah.
because the first time we butted heads was over no trees, and we fundamentally disagreed with each other. But those are always the best conversations,
I guess. Yeah, the no trees. Yeah, it's just it's a theory, of course, and there's not really an alternative to this theory. So there's no content. It's, you can just erase it and just leave it open and not think about it, but it's an actual content to give an explanation to what it is, because we don't know. The only other explanation, and I don't think you'd like that, is, yeah, God made it. He made the mountains. They're mountains because God said they were mountains, and he made them, and they're there because he wanted them to be there. So if you're fine with that explanation, no, I'd rather say they were actually part of a functional system that has a purpose in the overall thing. So that's what I think is more likely, because nothing really exists without a reason. We just forget the reason it exists. That's our problem.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, because when it comes to matters of creation, we have no way of going back and verifying. We don't have time machines.
Well, not machines, but there are other ways. But yeah, it's not for everyone, I guess, and especially for the common man, I guess. Yeah, it's like, what's it to you? How does it contribute to your life in a useful way by knowing this stuff? And I've been thinking about this even further. Like, if you realize that the Earth, the entire Earth, and this is part of my personal creation story, you might have received some hints through other people about it, is, yeah, the Earth is a giant dead tree, and we're hollowing it out like a bunch of termites, pretty much. And is that a good outlook? Is that nice to feel like we are that, and that is our fate, and that is the end point? So we're gonna end up in a giant desert wasteland, and there will be nothing left. Is that really a good thing to be aware of for the common day life? I don't think so. I think it's only makes people feel guilty, uncomfortable, unsure. They don't know what to do about it. And this is a general problem with a lot of things. And it's been hammering into my head a lot. And yeah, it's pretty heavy stuff. And I, in a way, I'm trying to decide now to take a few steps back, because I think that I've learned a lot about flat Earth, so much, so much, so many things. But I think that it's been saturated for me. Like, I love to see people learning about it. I love to see them talk about it, especially when they're good speakers. I love it. But I haven't heard anything really new, almost nothing really new in over half a year, I think. There's some things like when there are new map models, that's interesting. Like, Antonio did some really good work, I think, in that sense. I mentioned it in my previous hangout. And there are some interesting details that we are learning. The holographic stuff, I've been learning some about that. But it's just run out. I have to I have to get a life now. I learned about flat Earth, and I have to get a life now, because I can't fill in all my time learning about this stuff, because I've just run out of material. So I think that since, yeah, the next step is we have to explore. We want to explore. Like, the real bulk of new data for flat Earthers will be exploration data. But yeah, to do that, you have to have money. And that's a big problem for most of us, and especially for me. So that's why I am going to focus now on somehow, some way, getting my life around and getting some money. And then maybe I'll be able to save up and maybe, yeah, get a boat or something, and get something real done.
What would you actually want to explore? I mean, I'm just thinking of, immediately came to mind was the sun tracking, and it cost me zero. In fact, it probably made me about $30 or $40 because I monetized it. So it's one where what is it you want to do? You said get a boat. Would it be go straight to the Antarctic Circle, or what would you do?
North Pole. That's absolutely the first point, because once we run into landmass there and we have footage of this and coordination, we have proof that there is something except just a barren sea or an ice cap, so-called, whatever. Once we get like the first hint of it, that's just, we cracked. We broke another crack in the globe, and it's not gonna go away. Like, if we got all this data that the globe calculations don't fit, very obviously, but we don't have any concrete proof for these extra land masses, so we're still confined in this circle of ours. And I want to break out. I want to get a first hint, and I think the first place we can find it is at the North Pole, because if we want to do it at the South Pole, we have the giant ice cap one way or the other. Like, to actually prove that it's not a continent, Antarctica, we'd have to actually cross the ice cap. Oh, that's something, I don't think it's like a first thing you want to do as an explorer, since it's like one of the most monumental tasks there ever was in exploration. So it's not the thing you want to start out with. I'd say go to the north first, see if there's something there. Just get there, see what happens, and who knows, if we find something there, or even if we don't, then we could try to move on to the south.
The question next then would be, if that was your plan, the concern would be, more than the question, would be, based on what Cami and Bob showed when they were designing their map, we have a magnetic system that would lead you back on itself if you were just following the magnetic routes. So you'd have to figure out how to dead reckon to what you're saying is the center. And until we reach that point where to achieve that, we'd have to figure out how the world works first.
But that shouldn't be that difficult, really. We just have to understand how the magnetics really work. So, for example, there was this problem with the getting lost in the South Seas because of the South Pole, because it wouldn't point north anymore. It would point its south towards the South Pole. And that's just learning how to deal with maps. And we know this, so we're not gonna get lost anymore. We know now how the compass works. We can make our own maps. Not very professionally at first, but we have an understanding enough of how this world surface of ours works and the magnetics works to actually guide with our own perceptions instead of mechanisms that do it for us. We could explore to a certain degree without GPS, using the information and the knowledge that we've gathered so far. So we can get.
I like it. I think what you're saying.
They're containing us using the GPS. We explained, or everybody's talking about this, like how they're using these tools to just bend us, like a TomTom or a road guide. Just no, you have to go left here. Yeah, I know you want to go there, but you have to go left there because that's what the route says, and that's how they're keeping us in.
Sure. I mean, I think they're doing the same with the magnetic lines. The structure they've used or the structure that they have based their system on is one that they can contain us with. So as I said earlier, I mean, it's you've got to get to a situation where you're not dependent on magnetism to navigate. But in order to do so, you've got to map the world. And what I was going to say was, what you're saying is very admirable, which is to go out and do it yourself. I say it all the time. However, to change the subject slightly, how do you feel about the fact that you have, gunships that are scanning the coastline, with one sweep of radar, they can plot it all, within a certain amount of distance, a couple of miles, they've got a perfect scan of the land. So for us to try and do it with our limited budgets, when we are paying our taxes and they have, all of the facilities and equipment to do this, but choose to lie to us. How do you feel about the people that are perpetuating the lie, who have all the equipment to do this?
It's not their equipment. If it was their equipment, they would use it. But they're just as much slaves of the system as the equipment is. So it's not theirs. Not really.
Yeah. I know you're talking about the people on the ship, but I would agree with you right up to the very upper echelons of the people who are very literally in control of us. be it voted in or otherwise. The people who are in control, I feel, have gone through the same systems that are, the structures that are in place have been there for centuries, and therefore every person who is on top and in power isn't harboring some secret knowledge of flat Earth. In reality, they're just as indoctrinated as everybody else. If you were to challenge them and say, why are you hiding this truth from us? They would say, well, I'm not. Obviously, it's a globe. They would believe the same things that everyone else does. Therefore, they're going to keep that system churning if it makes them money. It's not just the fact that they're on board a ship and they've got their commands. I think right up to the very top person who's got a command, they believe it too. There's going to be a handful of people that know the truth. But I think on the whole, everybody who's in the control system, the one that's visible to us, very much believes they're living on a spinning ball.
Well, the representatives, the one that we get to see, of course, they have to believe it, because otherwise we would see it in their eyes. That's why when we talk about flat Earth globers, they look at us and they just don't listen because they distrust us, because they can see in our eyes. And so, of course, their representatives have to believe it, but they're not in command. They're just a bunch of talking puppets, all of them. And they think they might be in command because their actual controllers may have told them that they're in command, but they are not. They just are made to make us think that they are in command really, really meticulously. But so they're not, like the real controllers, they know it.
Above the people that are visibly in command, so you're talking the Obamas, the Trumps, whoever, above that, do you think there's another layer of...
Yes.
Okay. Tell me more.
They're the people that, well, they're the cabinet, as it were, the people that are chosen by the people that have to put out the responsibility. Then they are the people that they hire, and they are the ones that actually do everything and know everything. And that's what determines the real outcome of a presidency and of a government and how it's going to work. It's the people that they hire, but you don't get to hear about them. You might hear like the name of a company or something, but you don't know these individuals that do that are in that part of the system. You don't know them. So
I agree.
I think that the multitude of the people that are in control do know about it. They know very much, and they very, very willing to lie about it in your face as much as they can until the end. And that's why they're in control, because they have no problem with lying about it.
I'm going to make a little recommendation for you. Have you ever seen a show, it's a British show, called Yes Minister or Yes Prime Minister?
I have seen snippets of it. Yes. That's a very good comparison. Yeah.
I recommend it to everybody who's viewing this now as well. So Yes Minister or Yes Prime Minister. I think it was made in the 70s, but a superb show that basically demonstrates exactly how the puppetry and actual people in control run the UK government. So you've got all of the permanent secretaries explaining how they are actually in charge.
Yes.
But yeah,
another gem coming out of the age of Monty Python.
Definitely, the 70s was a great time for TV. I'm the first to admit it. I hate TV now, but I will watch shows like Yes Minister still.
I used to watch Blake 7. I loved it.
That's a whole new subject. I'm heartbroken about the loss of sci-fi. I mean, behind me, I've got a PC with like 15 terabytes of storage, and it's all high definition Blu-ray movies, hundreds, thousands of them, literally thousands. And it took me, I think it was months, I can't remember the exact amount of months, but months and months and months of ripping them. And then I found out the Earth is flat. So suddenly I'm not interested in any of this space stuff and sci-fi that's all stored on my PC. It's just not been used. Terrible.
Well, like the whole collecting space stuff, that really dies. Yeah, that's because it doesn't, just because it's space doesn't make it valuable anymore. I still do love my science fiction, including Star Wars. Yes, I'm that kind of person. But it's because the quality of it as a movie and the convincing power. I'm very interested in basically illusions that can convince people of certain images. And I find that concept very fascinating because it demonstrates the flexibility of the human mind. And I like that about it. But yeah, just because it's space doesn't mean much to me anymore. But if it's a really good movie that happens to be in space, really cool, or yeah, then I'll still like it. But a lot of these newer movies that are based on newer books that are sci-fi, I find a lot of them very uncomfortable, because they also have these new cultural suggestions that make them very, yeah, just the people are, I find them unbearable in a lot of the new movies. And that the older science fiction movies didn't have the problem, because they were still based on the culture that was there in the West back then, which was, well, pretty civilized and just common decency stuff. While now it's all harsh, it's all competition, it's all mercilessness, and that's being now forwarded in the new cultures, in the movies, especially the sci-fi. A lot of violence and action, and these themes, they constantly are brought up, and that's why I don't really like much of the new movies these days.
Crow 777 recently did an exceptionally good podcast where he went through with his guest the sort of history of the predictive programming from Earth to the Moon, Jules Verne, and all of the things that came after, that basically gave us the ideas of our current perception of space and what it is, satellites, traveling to the moon. It's really fascinating when you get to the end of that line with the movie you talked about earlier, because they're using predictive programming to undo the damage of a bad job. Fascinating.
Yeah. Oh, I just had this point, but I now forgot it.
It's all good. I can jabber on about movies and sci-fi all day, but because this is an impromptu chat anyway, Arwijn, I'm probably going to cut it a little bit shorter, because I've got a few things to do, child to attend to, and all of that sort of stuff. So I'll say a massive thank you at this stage. It's
been a good chat. It's nice being on a hangout with you.
Yeah, definitely. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Yes, certainly. All right.
Cool. Well, with that, I'll say once more a massive thank you to Arwijn for being on Flat Earth United Kingdom, and also to all of you who have joined us in the chat. Thank you very much for being here live. I've been Nathan Oakley. I'll see you all in the next video.